Welcome back, everybody, to a breaking news edition of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kip Adams with me on this Monday afternoon. And Kip, let's just jump right into it. Dylan Raiola has committed to the Georgia Bulldogs, 5-star, the number one overall recruit and the number one overall recruit across the board. The consensus number one recruit has pledged to Georgia. We thought we might be doing this podcast a couple weeks ago. There had been a little bit of smoke, a little bit of steam behind that, but I think it proved for Georgia fans and for Georgia coaches as well that the wait was worth it. They got the 6'3", 220-pound quarterback out of Phoenix who has pledged to what was already a very, very strong 2024 class. We got people calling me left and right as we try to do this podcast. But, Kip, let's just jump into just how big this decision is for Georgia landing a quarterback of Dylan Raiola's caliber.
Obviously, when you're getting the number one overall prospect in the country, that's big news. And Georgia, they're not hurting in recruiting. They already had kind of an elite class going this cycle. But just specifically at the quarterback position, I mean, you'd already touched on it. On Dogs 247, how big of a need that was for recruiting just overall this cycle, a big position. And last cycle, Georgia does not take a quarterback. They were kind of in the mix for Arch Manning for a while, and that was a quarterback that they had evaluated, and they were willing to take his commitment. But also just kind of looking toward this cycle, that coaching staff saw some talented signal callers in this class that, they were able to make the decision, we will not take a quarterback in the 2023 cycle because we see some guys that are really special in this class. And Dylan was one of those guys. When they were recruiting Arch Manning, they felt comfortable, if we don't take Arch Manning, Dylan Raiola is a guy that, we feel is as good as anyone in the 2023 cycle. And I think, the 24/7 sports scouts and analysts, we agree that if you're looking at both classes, 2023, 2024, Dylan is the most talented quarterback in either class. So Georgia rolled the dice, didn't take a quarterback. And obviously, now taking two quarterbacks this cycle, but getting a guy, Dylan Raiola, that is a 5-star signal caller, huge news for Georgia overall and a huge boost to this recruiting class, and a guy that, we thought they were number one for early on. So definitely big news today, Monday, as we record this podcast. This is something that, we've kind of felt pretty good for a while about, but now officially joining that recruiting class today.
Let's go a little bit over Dylan's recruitment. It's sort of like Georgia was in it, and then maybe Georgia's not in it. Ohio State takes the lead, and he backs off the Ohio State offer. For the people who are kind of getting caught up and trying to find out who Dylan Raiola is, give us an overview on what his recruitment has looked like and how we got to Monday where he is pledging to the Bulldogs.
The unique aspect of his recruitment is that Georgia was actually Kirby Smart was the first to offer Dylan way back in June 2021. Had him on campus, and he worked out for the coaching staff and got that first offer back then. I remember writing a story back then about just the connection there with Georgia and his father having, played with Matthew Stafford with the Detroit Lions, being, his father being a center, played for the Detroit Lions with Matthew Stafford for many years. So there was that kind of that built-in connection then. And since then, he's been in Athens 6 times. Georgia was kind of that, the team that had the early buzz. But again, these are 5-star quarterbacks or recruitments. You don't just get these handed to you. So a lot of visits last spring. I remember for a while, USC had moved ahead of Georgia. Lincoln Riley and that coaching staff had some momentum there. But then Ohio State got him on campus, several visits to Columbus, and they got his commitment last May. That commitment did not last, but at the same time, Georgia never went away. They never stopped communicating with him, never stopped recruiting him. And last December, Dylan Raiola reopened his recruitment and decommitted from Ohio State. And gosh, not even a month after that, where is Dylan Raiola? He's in Los Angeles. He's watching Georgia beat TCU for the national championship. And the door kind of swung back open for Georgia after that decommitment. The timing, couldn't have been better. I'm sure, it didn't hurt for them to also beat Ohio State in the playoffs, but they made that decision. Hey, let's go check out Athens again. And that was a real key moment in his recruitment. They made the trip back up to Athens and reconnected with the coaching staff. And then, at this point, you have Mike Bobo becoming the offensive coordinator at Georgia, and that was a key figure in his recruitment the entire time. Mike Bobo was on staff as an analyst last year. That connection with Dylan Raiola and his father was a very strong one. Mike Bobo was going to be an important part of his recruitment as long as Bobo was at Georgia. Being the offensive coordinator did not hurt at all. But during that visit to Georgia, that's when he kind of told the coaching staff, this is kind of where I think I want to be. Now, Nebraska, that was a program that kind of continued to recruit him as well. A legacy. That's where his dad went. His uncle was a coach on the Nebraska staff. So then, they tried to get him for an official visit. He was thinking about taking one in June, but he just couldn't wait that long. Behind the scenes, he's already kind of told everyone, I'm going to Georgia, been recruiting behind the scenes, and he wanted to go ahead and get out there and go public with his commitment and start helping recruit for Georgia. So, again, huge get for Mike Bobo. And, again, that relationship that he had and Kirby Smart had with his father, the Matthew Stafford connection did not help. But this is a player he just feels like he can be developed by Mike Bobo and that coaching staff in Athens.
Yeah, you think about and I think there were legitimate questions when Todd Monken left. Well, what does this mean for Dylan's recruitment? And then you had Mike Bobo step up, the connection with Matthew Stafford. So funny to me that there was a lot of Detroit Lions connections. Dan Orlovsky sounded the alarm last night, had us all waiting up and seeing what was going on. But obviously, you really can't downplay what a big addition this is for Georgia. You talked about it, Kip, the fact that they did not take a quarterback in last year's cycle after going very, very hard after Arch Manning. And now they got a situation where, as of now, they have two quarterbacks committed in the 2024 class, Dylan and Ryan Puglisi. That's been the plan all along, that they were going to take two quarterbacks. And based on what Ryan has said, this is not a surprise. I mean, that they want to add to the depth because it's so crucial to have options at quarterback. Cannot afford to be in a spot where you have an issue as far as depth. So those two guys would be big there. Let's talk a little bit about what Dylan brings to the table. What sort of stands out to you from his game? And it's obviously when he gets to Athens in 2024, going to be a lot of learning, going to be a lot of growing, and I'm sure growing pains along the way. But what is it about his game that has him as the number one recruit at any position in the 2024 cycle?
I think when you look at his game, immediately it's just the fact that not just the arm talent. You're going to hear can make all the throws, arm strength. That's kind of one of those things that when we're ranking quarterbacks, that's going to be brought up, the arm strength, and there's no issue there at all. But with Dylan's game, immediately you just see off-platform throws, and obviously right now, any comparison you start seeing that, you're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes because he's the quarterback that's kind of revolutionized that position with just his ability to make any throw, but to make any throw from anywhere, not just in the pocket. And so that comparison gets made in Dylan's game because you see it on film. You see him making incredible throws that, his feet aren't set and he's trying to, avoid pass rush, and he doesn't have, the standard arm angle at all times, but the ball gets there and it's an accurate throw with high velocity. And that's just kind of a rare combination. And then you start thinking about, well, what's Dylan going to have, playing in the SEC? He's going to have elite pass rushers coming at him at all times. And, even though Georgia has done as well a job as of any offensive line in the country as far as pass protection the last couple of years, what has Kirby Smart also said that he's started to put a premium on at the quarterback position? Well, that's mobility, the ability to extend plays and, to make throws when you're not standing there still in the pocket. And when you saw what Stetson Bennett was able to do at that position and kind of just how that opened up the offense for Georgia. Well, Dylan Raiola brings all that with, prototypical NFL size, incredible arm strength, but at the same time, he's also a student of the game. And I think that's really where that upside, he has the ability to unlock that potential because, every year you see guys that are 5-star quarterbacks, high-ranked quarterbacks that seem to have the tool set that may not pan out. That aspect as far as just his mental capability and the fact that he just knows what greatness looks like. Living in the same house as someone who played in the NFL for 12 years and was a Remington Trophy Award winner, he has that knowledge of what it takes to play at an elite level. So I think, you add all that together and you get an elite quarterback prospect and one of the most talented quarterbacks Georgia's ever signed. I can't say the most talented because that quarterback that Mike Bobo coached back in the day, Matthew Stafford, that arm talent still kind of sets the bar for quarterbacks coming out of high school. But man, Dylan has the complete package, and he's in that realm. And I think that itself just says a lot about his overall ability and how the sky really is the limit for him in Athens.
No doubt. I mean, you even mentioned him with Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl winner, a guy who maybe when it's all said and done winds up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We will see what happens there. But just being compared, like you said, Kip, I think that says all you need to know. We will take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit about what the quarterback room will look like going into 2024, and also any potential dominoes that may fall now that Dylan has pledged to the Dogs. Welcome back, everybody. Well, let's shift the focus, Kip, to what quarterback will look like at Georgia in 2024. As it stands, going into 2023, Georgia has 3 scholarship quarterbacks. That would be Carson Beck, that would be Brock Vandagriff, and Gunnar Stockton. If all 3 are back, that would be those 3, and then Dylan Raiola and also Ryan Puglisi in the 2024 cycle once we get into 2024. That would be 5 guys. I think, I won't speak for you, Kip, but I would be shocked if there are 5 guys in that room. What do you think Dylan's commitment means for what this room will look like when we're having a conversation this time next year?
Yeah, I think this fall is probably going to tell us a lot about the quarterback numbers in the room. We can't sit here and predict names. Right now, what we can say is, we think Carson Beck has a leg up on that competition, but that competition is not over. And fall camp's obviously going to play a huge role in that. But not just that. Just like Carson Beck last year, the reason why Carson Beck's still in Athens and has a chance to be the starting quarterback for Georgia next year is because he got the backup snaps last year. He was able to take that next step in his development. So it's not just who's number 1. Who's number 2 this fall could tell us a lot about what that quarterback room looks like next year. And I think for us to say that all 3 of those quarterbacks will be here next year, I think we would be, that I don't think that we would be given an accurate take on what the projection should be. I don't think all 3 of those quarterbacks will be here this time next year. And just knowing that 2 more quarterbacks are coming in and knowing that position, you only get so many chances. And so these guys know that they have the ability to start somewhere. And so whether 1 quarterback leaves or 2 quarterback leaves, that right there is where, the guessing will start and the speculation will be. But we know that right now there's a good chance they'll have 3 quarterbacks on the roster right now. And 2 of those guys are, verbal commitments right now. So that's kind of where things go. They're still a long way, and neither one of those commitments is signed. So other teams are going to continue to recruit those quarterbacks as well. But I think, the room is going to thin out a little bit next year. But what Kirby Smart has done is made sure that there are 2 very talented guys that are going to try to push that room in year 1. Whether Carson Beck or Vandagriff or Stockton is the starting quarterback coming off of this season, these quarterbacks are talented enough to push those guys. And I think that's kind of the whole point and what Kirby Smart's always trying to do at every position on the roster. But, these are guys that have NFL skill sets and, have a chance to come in and see how quickly they can pick up Mike Bobo's system.
It's going to be fascinating. And the thing that I'm really struck by having this conversation, there wasn't really a ton of wiggle room Georgia had with the 2024 class, just because, like we've already talked about, they did not sign a quarterback in 2023. There was the threat coming out of spring that, hey, maybe one of these guys, these three guys that are at Georgia, decide that it's in their best interest to go elsewhere. Only having two scholarship quarterbacks would have been really, really rough. And how common it is for guys to get banged up, but all three of those guys stayed. All three are going to try to push each other this fall and try to see the field for Georgia. And now you have a situation where you'll have a good bit of talent, whether, whoever starts, if they, have an opportunity to leave to go to the NFL. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility if whoever starts has a really big year, or we go through and during the winter or the spring portal going into the 2024 season, one of those guys says, hey, look, I'm not the starter. I'm going to try to start over elsewhere and try to get a chance to start. But having these two guys in, I think especially a guy like Ryan Puglisi, who is signing up from the jump, understanding that he is not the only quarterback in his class. I think that's a huge win for Georgia. I think it puts their quarterback room in such a very rare air, really, when you think about the talent they have, because it is so competitive and everybody, at quarterback, only one QB gets the ball, only one QB as long as everything's going to plan is going to see the field. But they've really navigated, I think, what could have been a very treacherous sort of road when it comes to the quarterback room for the future. And I think they're sitting really pretty with what they've been able to do and who they look to add.
Yeah, and we've seen this in the past. I mean, how quickly that can change as well. I know Georgia fans have seen a unique quarterback room throughout Kirby Smart's tenure. Just going back and seeing how Jake Fromm was able to come in and as a true freshman get thrown in and lead Georgia to a national championship berth, bring in a 5-star quarterback. And, it doesn't work out. So as far as the 5-star quarterback, working out at Georgia, but at the same time, I think Kirby Smart is established that he's just not going to rest on his laurels and think he's got a quarterback for 3 years. It's just not how it works in today's landscape. So he's going to continue to stockpile at every position. That's what he's doing at the quarterback position because it's the best you can do. You don't know how these guys are going to develop, once they get in college. And the only thing you can do is continue to recruit the position to make sure that you're not stuck with, 2 quarterbacks in the room. And rarely does a program get to, tap into the walk-on quarterback and, get the level of play that Georgia was able to get out of Stetson Bennett. You cannot expect something like that to happen again. That's why his story was such a unique one. So for Georgia right now, I think you got to look at it and go, I don't know who the quarterback will be as far as this fall, next fall, but it looks like it's a very, very bright future for whoever's throwing these pass catchers the ball at Georgia, which it looks like we've already talked about how elite that room is. It looks like the arrow is pointing up as far as where the talent is going to be at the wide receiver position and obviously at tight end as well.
To that point, I was going to bring up what Keith Finley mentioned on our Facebook comments. Elite wide receivers and tight ends will follow. Well, it got real interesting pretty much as soon as Dylan announced. Jeremiah Smith tweeted, who is the number 1 receiver in the country. Pretty much, a minute or two after Dylan announced, he tweeted what I would describe as a thinking emoji. And it's already got the speculation going. But, anytime there's a quarterback of Dylan's caliber, there will be players who follow. You kind of have that Pied Piper when you have the nation's top quarterback. And it would be no surprise if we see something similar with Georgia over the next few days and probably the next few weeks as well. Kip, who are some of the names that you're really keeping an eye on or just things in general you want to see in the aftermath of Dylan pledging to Georgia?
Yeah, it's funny how the timing works. So Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 wide receiver, as you mentioned, committed to Ohio State. And, that program there's not a program in the country that's done what they've done at the wide receiver position the last couple of years. They've done similar to what Georgia's done at tight end. So, the production is there, the NFL, development is there, but really Brian Hartline and the wide receiver recruiting, it's been off the charts. So it's not going to be easy for any program to flip the commitment of Jeremiah Smith. But if there is a program that has a shot, well, it's got to be Georgia. And the reason I mentioned the timing is that now, you have Dylan Raiola committing. Well, what's happening this weekend? Well, Georgia has its scavenger hunt event this weekend. And, well, who would be coming on an official visit this weekend? Jeremiah Smith. So, again, going to be right there with Georgia's new quarterback commitment. Dylan is going to be in town on an unofficial visit, recruiting for Georgia. And, the timing could not be better for that. And that's kind of why he went ahead and got the ball rolling on that, because he knows he's going to be in town. He's not going to be the only one in town. Also, you look at the tight end, Jaden Riddell at Missouri, number 4 tight end in the country on the composite. He's going to be in town on an unofficial visit for for this weekend for the scavenger hunt as well. So Dylan's going to make sure he gets FaceTime with him. And then you look at next week, 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, also out of Missouri. He's going to be in town for his official visit that first weekend in June. That's when Dylan's going on his official visit to Georgia. So Dylan's going to be recruiting for Georgia multiple weeks in Athens and recruiting for, elite 5- and 4-star pass catchers during those couple of weeks while he's in Georgia. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back the following weekend, June 9th, to be back again with Jaden Riddell and during Ryan Puglisi's official visit as well. So I think you look at those pass catchers, those are definitely guys that I think Georgia has a great, chance of getting some more momentum in their recruitment as far as offensive guys. I'm not even sure you keep it, just limited to offensive guys. You start thinking about 5-star athlete KJ Bolden. He's going to be there for the this weekend for the event as well. A guy who could play safety, defensive back at the next level out of Buford. And he's also going to be back in Athens for that June 9th weekend for his official visit. And that's also the weekend that Sammy Brown, he'll be taking his official visit to Georgia, the 5-star linebacker out of Jefferson. And those are guys that, again, yeah, they're playing defense, but they're also guys with 5 stars next to their names, guys that Georgia's heavily involved with, has some momentum with. And this is the kind of commitment that can kind of get that momentum going for those guys. And maybe one or both of those guys decide they're ready to go ahead and wrap up their recruitment as well and commit to Georgia. That is the kind of impact a guy like Dylan Raiola can have. And I think it will have that type of impact with a couple of these recruitments.
It's going to be fascinating to watch because there's no doubt that there's going to be some more people who jump on board and decide to join this team. You look at this 2024 class, 12 commits. It really got a chance to be a very, very special class by the time it is said and done. Kip, before we wrap this up, what parting thoughts do you have? Dylan Raiola pledges to Georgia. Big day for Georgia. Kirby Smart, Mike Bobo. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
The rich get richer. We talked about Georgia's class and how this has a chance to be, one of the best classes Kirby Smart's ever brought in. And it's just an incredible thing to talk about, because that's the one thing that Kirby Smart did immediately when he came in. He started recruiting at an elite level, built the best roster in college football, but does not seem to be, slowing down anytime soon. I think you look at the average rating of these recruits, it's pushing 95 now with the addition of Dylan Raiola. That is an outstanding average per recruit, and one that I haven't really seen before. So when all is said and done, you've seen the classes that Alabama was able to bring together, some of those all-time point totals on 24/7 Sports, 320, 325. This looks like one of those classes where Georgia could go over 320 points, and gosh, I mean, they could push for 330 when all is said and done. So talent acquisition, roster built up from 1 to 85 will always be paramount to Kirby Smart and his coaching staff. And it does look like the addition of Dylan Raiola is going to allow them to really branch out and bring in guys that maybe we're not looking closely at Georgia before, especially that wide receiver position. That's the one kind of narrative left at Georgia, is that they don't have elite pass catchers, and the 1,000-yard receiver only having one in program history. These are the kind of players you get. A guy like Ryan Wingo or Jeremiah Smith. Those are the kind of guys that can kind of dispel that narrative, and really, I mean, at that point, what do you have? What do you have to recruit against Georgia?
No doubt. I mean, that sums it up. I mean, that they get number one player in the country. You think of what they've been able to do at quarterback these last few years, and to not to discredit some of the guys they've had, because they've had some really highly recruited guys in that room, and guys like Jake Fromm in the past who played really, really well. But you look at the talent that Dylan brings to the table, and you look at, again, I keep going back to when I talked to David Andrews about Mike Bobo, and he said, just look at the amount of talent they've got to work with. Now you throw in a 5-star quarterback who's seen as the top player in the country. I think a lot of Georgia fans, if I could give advice, is just exhale if you were worried about Mike Bobo. He winds up landing his quarterback, and I think that there's going to be more talent to come. And that's what's going to be very interesting to watch, as we said, going forward, just who winds up deciding to follow Dylan, and who decides that they want to be dogs as well. So we're going to wrap up this episode. Appreciate everybody who hopped on in such short notice, and for everybody who's listening to this after the fact. I would recommend everybody go to Dogs 247. We've got a ton of content coming out of Dylan Raiola's announcement, going from what he brings to the table, and also, as we were just discussing, some of the guys who may follow suit. And there will be more stories as well coming out of this. But we'll wrap up this episode. I appreciate everybody who checked this out. Thanks to Kip Adams for popping on with me. And we'll get out of here and get back to work. Until next time, take care, everybody.